For over a century, the Battle of Little Bighorn has been shrouded in myth and legend. We're told it was Custer's last stand, a heroic final fight against impossible odds. But what if the story we know is wrong? In a stunning and rarely discussed account, Chief Rain in the Face, a legendary Lakota warrior who was there on that fateful day, delivered a deathbed confession that turns history on its head. His eyewitness testimony reveals the true final moments of General George Armstrong Custer, a revelation so shocking and controversial that it continues to divide and stun historians to this day. What did he really say? And why does it change everything we thought we knew about one of America's most famous battles? If you love stories that uncover the real people behind history, hit subscribe and ride with us into the past. History remembers it as Custer's last stand, a desperate fight to the death, frozen in myth and legend. But what if the truth was different? What if one Lakota warrior's long-ignored words could rewrite the ending of the Battle of the Little Bighorn? This is the real story of Custer's last stand, told through the eyes of the man who lived it, Rain in the Face. His name was spoken in fear by his enemies, a hunk-papa Lakota warrior so fierce they said he killed Custer himself. Driven by a vow of vengeance, for he believed Custer had taken his brother and sister, Rain in the Face carried a fury that burned darker than night. He was among the warriors who surrounded Custer's men in that final chaotic clash. For decades, the U.S. Army tried to silence him, but when Rain in the Face finally broke his silence, his story shattered the world's understanding of that fateful day. From soldiers jamming rifles to a revenge sworn in blood, his testimony reveals the human truth behind the legend. For years, they tried everything: kindness, promises, even threats. Army officers and government men begged one of the most feared Lakota warriors to tell his story, to reveal what really happened the day General Custer fell. But he never spoke a word. Until one day, in a quiet room, a man named Harry asked the question that changed everything, and the legend, known as Rain in the Face, finally broke his silence. Everyone knew the rumors. They knew the poet Longfellow had written that Rain in the Face had slain Custer. So, when he finally agreed to speak at a council at Standing Rock, with leaders like Gall and Sitting Bull listening, the crowd fell silent. One man, Harry, spoke up with a half grin. Harry dramatized. "Rain," he said, "you were brave, no doubt. But tell us this. How did Tom Custer, a smaller man, manage to defeat you?" The words hit like an arrow. Rain in the Face's eyes narrowed. He rose to his full height, his presence commanding the space. He took a breath, and then he began to tell his side of the story. For a moment, it was as if history itself was speaking through him. This is his testimony, as recorded by McLaughlin. Rain in the Face began his story. 2 winters before the great fight, we were camped. We had good times, dancing, racing, games. Buffalo and ponies were plenty. The girls jested with me, trying to rile me. But one taunt went too far. A girl dared him to prove his bravery by riding to Fort Lincoln to kill a white man. Rain in the Face said, "I warned her. It was dangerous. Soldiers watched. Patrols rode near." But she answered, "A brave man fears nothing. If you're a coward, stay. I'll find someone brave enough to dance the sun dance." He could not let that stand. The other girls laughed. The young men kept quiet. Anger rose in him, and with it, a hunger for a fight. They feared me. I would have killed any who mocked. At my lodge, I blackened my face, took my gun, bow, and pony, and slipped out under cover of night. He rode 45 miles to Fort Lincoln and waited for 2 days, stalking his prey. He passed up chances at a teamster and a wood hauler. He wanted a soldier's brass buttons for the girl who had taunted him. Finally, at dawn, he saw his chance, a veterinarian riding toward a spring. And behind him, long yellow hair, and his troop rode about 100 paces behind. I charged, shot the... Rain in the Face made his move. He struck the veterinarian with his war club, riddled him with arrows, and cut off his buttons. But the shot had been heard. Long Yellow Hair heard the shot and galloped back. I had no time to scalp them. I leaped on my pony and shouted for them to pursue. He led them on a desperate chase to the Cannonball River, but they finally crept up and tackled him to the ground. He was bundled into a wagon and taken to the guardhouse at Fort Lincoln. They slammed me into a cell, chained my wrists, gave me a single thin blanket. Snow whistled through the cracks all winter long. I froze. He was treated not as a chief, but as a captive woman. The humiliation burned. He told his captor, the officer known as Little Hair, Tom Custer, that if he ever helped him break loose, would tear out his heart and eat it. That chance came. An accomplice sawed through his irons, and they slipped away into the night, shots ringing out behind them. Rain in the Face escaped back to Sitting Bull, a hunter now hunted, but safe in the hills. The next winter, he came to the Standing Rock Agency. He had not signed the peace treaty and received no rations. To prove he was a man of his word, he sent Little Hair a picture on a buffalo hide, a final grim promise. Then came the Battle of the Little Bighorn. His voice grew stronger as he described the fight, his hands moving as if reliving it. He dismissed the famous white artist's drawings of the battle. "No," I cried, "that picture lies. It shows bows and arrows, yet we wielded stronger weapons. Their rifles fired once, then cartridges jammed. I saw it, dozens of guns on the ground with shells stuck inside." He described the chaos, the close quarters fighting. And then he came to the moment everyone had waited for, the moment with Tom Custer. When I met him again, I took his heart, a bleeding heart. That is my whole story. The room was stunned into silence. Much of what he described matched Army records. But this final visceral claim, the fulfillment of a vow sworn in a frozen cell, was a truth only he could tell. It was not the myth of a noble charge, but the raw human story of revenge, honor, and a promise kept. Rain in the Face leaned forward, took a pencil, and flipped over the paper with the false drawing. "Let me show you how it was." And he began to draw the truth. A broad, sideways S, the curve of the Little Bighorn River. Along its banks he drew a village of immense power. We were like blades of grass, perhaps 4,000 to 6,000 people, over 1,000 lodges. To deceive the scouts, Sitting Bull had the women set up empty lodges, hiding their true strength. He then slipped away to a high hill to perform strong medicine, returning with a prophecy that thundered through the camp. The Great Spirit, he said, had warned of soldiers coming, but promised we would crush them. His word set our hearts on fire. The next day, scouts brought word. Soldiers were near. They knew the soldiers' horses were tired and that the false lodges had fooled them. When Long Yellow Hair did not press forward, it pleased us. We let the soldiers cross the bluffs, and then our young men cut off their retreat. Gall moved most of the warriors upstream to cut them off. Crazy Horse commanded the Cheyennes. Rain in the Face led his own fierce Hunk Papa band. They thought we were few, and we were ready. He described the soldiers making a grave mistake by breaking their line. We struck hard. The soldiers charged and faltered under our fire. Men behind them poured lead into their ranks. The Lakota and Cheyenne closed the circle and surged like waves. They knew they were beaten. They dismounted. Every fourth man held the horses. We shot the holders and sent the ponies into panic by waving blankets. Our women rounded them up. The chaos was absolute. Officers shouted and pointed, but every figure looked the same. In the smoke and noise, Rain in the Face never saw Long Yellow Hair. I had sung the war songs until gunsmoke filled my lungs. My spirit had risen. Their rifles fired once, then cartridges jammed. I saw it, dozens of guns on the ground with shells stuck inside. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a grim, final tone. When their firearms failed, we finished them with war clubs, like driving a stake through sheep. Some begged for mercy. We gave none. It was not the gallant charge of legend. It was a tactical masterpiece, a decisive victory born of strategy, spirit, and the brutal reality of close-quarters combat. This was the battle as Rain in the Face lived it. This was the truth he had carried. In the smoke and chaos, Rain in the Face felt unstoppable, shielded by his white weasel-tail charm. He fought with a fierce, blind rage. Soldier blood and brain spattered my face, hot, bitter, and choking. Mad with the rush, I cannot count how many men I passed to reach him. And then he saw him, the man who had chained him, Tom Custer. Little hair. He wore no uniform. His hair was short, but Rain in the Face knew him. He knew me. I laughed and cried out. His lips moved, but his voice was drowned by battle. He showed fear. Close enough, he fired his revolver. He doesn't know where the gun went after. What happened next was done with a war club and a knife. The vow sworn in a frozen cell was fulfilled. I dismounted, carved out his heart, bit a piece, and spat it in his face. Then I rode away, shaking what I had taken. Satisfied and spent, I did not scalp him. My vow was fulfilled. That was enough. I left the field then. But even in victory, old divisions remained. When Sitting Bull returned, he stood before the warriors, proud. But Gall rose and argued back. Their quarrel over command split the camp. You made medicine, but we made war. We could have crushed the last soldiers on the hill, but their disputes stopped us. As the battle quieted, the women came to finish the wounded and gather spoils. They searched for the scalp of long yellow hair, but never found it. When word came that more soldiers were marching with cannon, the great village turned north and crossed the border into Canada. I stayed behind until Sitting Bull returned, and together we came back home. I was glad. That's my story. I've never told it to white men before, but I'm glad I did. And with that, the warrior fell silent. He had given his testimony, not the sanitized legend of artists and poets, but a raw, human story of vengeance, honor, and the brutal cost of war. A story, finally, in his own words.